With talks of Half-Life resurfacing, and the rumors floating around of a follow-up to one of the greatest sequels of all time, a thought occurred to me. I haven't played a Half-Life game.
What?
You see, lately I've been on a journey of discovery, a journey that involves revisiting milestone games that I may have missed, lost interest in, or in this case, was hesitant to play based on the preconceived notion of its outdated game design. Today, that journey has led me to Black Mesa, a fan-made remake of one such milestone game, Half-Life, a game that sits only 1 point lower than the highest rated PC game on Metacritic, a game from 26 years ago that couldn't possibly live up to the tremendous amount of praise and reverence it garnered throughout the years. In all honesty, what I expected was to boot up this universally acclaimed game just to be immediately put off by its poorly aged game design and subsequently labeled myself as a phony baloney gamer. But what I ended up getting was an experience that I was not at all prepared for, and I can now wholeheartedly say, I finally get it.
Oh my god. I get it. I get it.
Once again, I'd ask you to please leave a like on this video if you can. And also if you enjoy talking games, maybe consider subbing. Also, it's been about 3 months since my last upload. But don't worry about that, we'll get to all of it at the end of the video. But for now, let's get back to this one.
Good morning and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System.
Alright, let's start with the obvious topic on the agenda. This is not Half-Life. This is a fan-made remake of the critically acclaimed classic. You see, Half-Life was a revolutionary first-person shooter made by Valve in 1998. It was developed on the Gold Source engine, which was a modified version of the Quake engine. An engine that was considered revolutionary almost 30 years ago, and most famously used to create, well, all the old Quake games, and more. Before I lose some of you, just trust me for a second here, just bear with it for a little bit, it's all relevant to what I'm about to cover. You see, by the time the sequel to Half-Life had released, the Gold Source engine was already succeeded by the more versatile and technically advanced Source engine. An engine I'm sure everyone is familiar with, even if you don't realize it. Just look at the Left 4 Dead series, Portal series, Dota 2, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2, and of course, Half-Life 2. These games are capable of standing the test of time. You can switch to any one of these masterpieces right now and it would not have aged a day. Mainly due to the incredible game design that was made possible thanks to this amazing engine. That's where Black Mesa comes in. With the original Half-Life still locked to the outdated Gold Source engine, a small group of passionate developers took it upon themselves to band together in 2005 and recreate the experience on the newer Source engine. This allowed the devs to breathe new life into this beloved classic, and at the same time, expand on what was there in some regards, and I'll get to that in a bit. But in total, this project amounted to a 16-year effort in updating Half-Life for a modern audience. And if you ask me, it is well worth it. Alright, I'm gonna keep it real with you. This was the most intimidating write-up I've done so far. I know how near and dear this game is to the hearts of many players out there, and when I booted up this game, I thought there was no way it would live up to the insane hype surrounding it. But I'm pleased to admit, I'm glad my skepticism was challenged, because it gives me hope for this journey of discovery I'm on. As I make my way through these classic titles, there's always a feeling that they could never reach those high ratings they achieved over 20 years ago, as game design standards are constantly changing and improving year on year. So if you were to play those games today, then surely they would seem archaic in comparison. That is simply not the case with Black Mesa. Playing through this game for the very first time has proven that the foundation on which it was constructed remains as fun, engaging, and entertaining as it was in 1998. Emphasis on the fun factor. This is something not all devs consider when creating a new game. For example, look at something like 2023's Lords of the Fallen game, a game that heavily draws inspiration from Dark Souls. When you compare the two on paper, Lords of the Fallen comes out on top with more complex systems, more detailed graphics and world creation, and arguably better melee combat. But when you ask people which game is more fun, 99% of them will tell you it's Dark Souls. Not all games that seek to innovate truly understand what makes these games fun in the first place, and I believe Half-Life understood at its core it had to be fun above all. Having it ported over to the Source engine with the creation of Black Mesa definitely helps in this regard, mainly because the graphics and gunplay are now closer to modern standards. Before we go any further, I should mention, since the inception of this video idea, the nature of this write-up has shifted from a strictly Black Mesa video to a Half-Life video. And due to the length of my unfair, unexpected, and might I add unpaid sabbatical, that is a joke, I don't get paid to do this, I've been afforded the time to do my due diligence of playing the original Half-Life. Well, not exactly the original. You see, I'd waited about a week for this damn game to go on sale, only to finally get it and have my profile corrupted within the first 30 minutes, leaving me unable to launch the game. Thanks, Gabe. So after an hour or so of trying to fix it, what I ended up doing was downloading this mod, which apparently adds some quality of life improvements, and I just removed all of them. This was the only way to experience the closest thing to the original authentic Half-Life game. Without going in depth about it, I can say, yeah, Half-Life was a fun game to play. It was exactly as I imagined, a scaled back version of the masterpiece I'd only just played. In a way, it made me appreciate some of the advancements and changes made in Black Mesa. For example, in the original, if you want to select a weapon, you have to scroll the mouse wheel and manually press the select key, otherwise it wouldn't equip. Opposed to Black Mesa, where the weapon is automatically equipped as you scroll. This feels way more natural and intuitive. Another issue I had with the original is how unwieldy Gordon's movement can sometimes feel. The guy's at full sprint by default, so platforming sections were a lot more frustrating than in the Black Mesa remake. Also, another nice change, automatic crouch jumping. If you know, you know. But to swing things the other way, the remake can seem a bit bloated at times. The original might take you around 11 hours to beat, whereas Black Mesa could take you over 15 hours. But I will say, wherever Black Mesa sought to expand, they did so with expertise, coming off as if it was always meant to be that way. By the end of it, I reached the conclusion that I stand by my original statement. Going back really didn't add much to the experience. In fact, its shortcomings gave me a deeper appreciation for Black Mesa. After playing the original, I don't think I would ever go back. This is not me saying it's bad, please don't get it twisted. I know some of you hold a soft spot for the original, but as someone who's played both games and is free from the haze of nostalgia, in my opinion, Black Mesa is the definitive way to experience this game. And I highly recommend this version of the game if you haven't played it before. Despite what many people might tell you, there is absolutely no reason to go back and play the original, unless it's to pay homage to the OG. After completing the campaign, I really started to appreciate the FPS games that Valve created after creating Half-Life, and I kinda understand the frustration people have with this company. You see, Valve in their prime were a company on top of their game and, quite frankly, on top of the gaming industry as a whole. When you think about it, some of their best work is all thanks to Half-Life, and this realization is what gives me such a deep appreciation for this game. Half-Life is not just a straightforward sci-fi shooter. It is a savant of multiple genres, including things like incredibly satisfying gunplay, imaginative enemy design that's fun to engage with, a captivating story that's not drowned in exposition or jarring cutscenes, instead allows you to experience every riveting moment while in full control of your character, and most surprisingly, a platformer that's full of rewarding environmental puzzle solving. It's extremely rare to find a game that can be considered a jack of all trades and masters so many core game systems, let alone one doing it in the late 90s. As I mentioned before, after playing this game, I came to realize how Half-Life was responsible for some of my favorite games of all time. Look at the game's individual aspects, it's possible to draw a through line to see how they evolved into full-fledged experiences. For example, engaging with the various enemies of Half-Life, it's easy to see the natural progression of game design that would inevitably lead to the creation of Left 4 Dead. In Half-Life, shooting things is fun. Simple as that. I have to make a standout mention to gunplay in both these games, almost 30 years later, and the gunplay is impeccable as ever. This is important to stress as I feel like it tends to go overlooked in many modern shooters, whereas it should be at the forefront of its development. Just look at the BioShock franchise, one of my favorite series of all time. As much as I love these games, the gunplay is, in my opinion, already outdated. If you don't believe me, just go back to part 1, my favorite of the trilogy by the way, and fire that revolver a few times. Trust me, it doesn't feel good. Getting back to Half-Life, landing a critical headshot with the revolver is just as satisfying as mag dumping a squad of highly trained field operatives. Not to mention the self-gratification that comes with one-shotting a headcrab zombie, making efficient use of your shotgun, ensuring your ammo supply never runs dry. All the weapons and tools at your disposal have a purpose. And for every scenario and enemy the game throws at you, there is an answer. How you choose to answer is up to you. Brainsucker zombie guy coming at you? Reach for your trusty shotgun for a clean one-hit kill. Or if you're brave enough, save your buckshot for a rainy day and put your trusty crowbar to use. Half-Life constantly creates new and interesting scenarios that test you as a player, by slowly introducing new enemy types and incrementally increasing the challenge by means of more numerous swarms, ambushes, or limited play space in which to maneuver, eventually leading you to face-offs where you're fighting all kinds of crazy monsters, constantly scrambling for whatever makes them less alive quicker. I'm willing to bet Valve saw the potential in this incredibly fun gameplay loop of dispatching aliens in creative ways, which inevitably led to the creation of Left 4 Dead. I would go so far as to say that I see the similarities in enemy design. Just look at the barnacle from Half-Life and the smoker from Left 4 Dead. Both have incredibly long tongues that draw you in and munch on your head as soon as they get you. Or the antlion and the spitter that hurls acidic vomit at you from a distance. Also, who can dispute the similarities between the headcrab and the jockey, who controls the victim once latched on? And there's also the hound eye and the boomer, who explodes in the vicinity of the player. Okay, that one was a bit of a stretch, but you get the idea. Half-Life was no doubt the inspiration for Left 4 Dead, and what I find impressive is that a single aspect of the game was fleshed out to create one of the most successful co-op shooters. On the other side of things, I was taken by surprise how much platforming and puzzle solving the game expects of you. Now don't get me wrong, it's no Rayman Legends or Talos Principle, but it was enough to keep things interesting during the lulls of combat. Simple yet effective environmental design kept things fresh by forcing you to take in the layout of each area and make strategic choices based on the threats found within them. Whether it be a room full of barnacles or a warehouse occupied by highly trained covert operatives, each scenario calls for a specific approach in order to make it out alive. And a lot of that strategy comes down to your movement throughout the level. If you treat every encounter like a round of Nuketown in Call of Duty and find yourself running and gunning like some sort of action hero, you're gonna quickly learn how soft and squishy your innards really are. Because these guys do not fuck around. A lot of them hit like a truck with pinpoint accuracy to boot. So it is in your best interest to be mindful of your surroundings and keep close to cover as much as possible. When it comes to actually traversing these levels, the platform sections is something I never expected. But I'm glad it was included. Going into this game, I had no idea how the levels were going to play out. I was actually expecting a semi-open world immersive sim, something like Prey or Bioshock, but what I got was a straight up FPS with a sprinkle of platform puzzling. These puzzles were by no means brain-breaking, but just enough to keep you focused by grabbing your cheeks and forcing you to pay attention if you drift off for any reason. Okay, that sounded a bit more aggressive than intended. What I'm saying is that the game does a fine job of presenting you with enough resistance so that you aren't mindlessly blasting through the level, but not so much that you're left scratching your head about what to do next. I kinda get the impression that the concept for the Portal series was birthed from this kind of meticulous and clever level design. Finally, let's talk about something that I know is a bit contentious in the Half-Life community, that being the Zen level. Specifically, Black Mesa expanding on the Zen level. If you played the original Half-Life, you know that Zen, the final act of the game, seems more like an afterthought compared to everything that came before it. It had so much potential to be something more than a couple of floating platforms and a clumsy boss fight. But the Crowbar Collective took whatever little was there and went hog wild with their interpretation of this neglected level. The very first time I made it to this area, I was genuinely surprised to find myself so deep in alien territory. I was now literally on an alien planet. But even more so, the game was going to the far reaches of space, the extent of which I personally never expected to experience. I'm not exaggerating when I say I was in awe of the cosmic constellations and colourful auroras of the skybox. Up to this point, the game had remained somewhat grounded in its themes of alien invasion and military cover-ups. Not that it's within the realm of plausibility, but not completely devoid of all possibility. What I'm saying is, the level of immersion I've felt leading up to this point had me believe that the fantastical landscape such as this might be a bit far-fetched for the boundaries set by the game itself. Nevertheless, I was ecstatic to find myself on a completely alien planet. A planet that presumably doesn't confine itself to the rules of the one I just stepped off. This was truly a whole new chapter of the game, and in a way could have made for a completely different game. Having played through it, I can see how some people might not like it as much as I. And after playing through the original Half-Life, I'm able to quantify just how far Zen has been expanded in Black Mesa. I for one really appreciate the expansion of this level. In my opinion, the developers did an excellent job of fleshing out the alien planet, given what little they had to work with. The level plays as if Valve created it themselves. Admittedly, my only gripe, much like most people, is that it drags on a bit longer than it should. Still, the improvements to the chapter, such as more detailed and developed levels, better environmental puzzles, and turning the boss fights into a more memorable and momentous occasion, outweighs any minor gripes I had about Zen. Half-Life, or should I say Black Mesa, will no doubt leave an everlasting impression on me, as it sets a new standard for what a modern FPS should aspire to. All these years later, it became crystal clear all what Half-Life has done to revolutionize one of my favorite genres of gaming. Now, onto something a bit more serious. It's no secret to anyone keeping up with my channel that I've been out of commission for about 3 months. The simple reason behind that is I had no power from the 29th of November last year to now. In addition to that, our water was also cut from that day. There's a long story behind why this happened, but the long and short of it is that I live with my family on my grandfather's farm, and he passed away in August last year. You see, over the years, there was a gross mishandling of the property's finances, a matter in which my immediate family had no say in. So for 3 months, we were treated unfairly because of someone else's negligence. This was honestly a very dark moment in my life, as I was harboring a lot of anger and resentment for the people that put us in this position. Look, there's quite a bit more to it, but hopefully I have a better understanding of my headspace during this period. Look, I could have easily went to a family's home for a couple of days at a time and continued my videos, but like I said, mentally I wasn't in the right space to do so. It's disappointing that all this happened just as my channel was on an upward swing, and I was just about a few subs short of my 500 goal. I was hoping to hit eligibility for Super Thanks. To qualify, you need 500 subs, 3 videos in the last 3 months, and 3,000 watch hours. As you can see, I qualified for the subs and the 3,000 watch hours, but I haven't put out a video in 3 months, so I'm not eligible yet. By the end of November last year, this was all within reach. In fact, I was on about 490 subs then. I just needed a few more to become eligible. But hey, what can you do? On the bright side, I finally got around to some reading, which is something I've been meaning to do for years now. Having never read a book to completion before, I can confidently say that I read 5 novels in January alone, and I plan to keep going. I'm hoping that all this reading will help me become a better scriptwriter, if I'm honest. The other positive that came out of all of this is I finally got around to Dungeons and Dragons, and if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you know that simply learning the rules to start playing is extremely time consuming. In fact, I was completely ignorant to it. I attempted to learn everything in the space of 3 days while prepping for my first session. Naturally, that ended up being a very loose game of D&D, but since then our group has actually become addicted to it. So yeah, that's where I've been for the past few months. Hopefully the year will progress in a more positive fashion. If you've made it this far, know that you have already done me a huge service by simply watching my video. And for that, I thank you. So let's have a better 2025, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.